Hey guys, what's going on? Dan here with another video in our nutrition chapter. So this video is going to be going back into a bit of the fundamentals off of what we just talked about, which was TEF, so thermic defective food, NEAT, BMR, total energy or total daily energy expenditure. We looked at calorie surplus, maintenance, and deficits. Okay, and we're just going to dive into it a little bit more. This time, just looking at fats, carbs, and protein. So before I go into it, just realize that all these three things are necessary for our body to function optimally, right? Fats are massively important, not only for hormonal control, but for, like just building the cell walls in our body. Carbs, as we know, can fuel the brain. They fuel performance. They are found in skeletal muscle. They're found in our blood. They're found in the liver. Again, a whole bunch of different things that happens with carbs. It can also be quite beneficial when it comes to protein absorption, things like that. And then obviously protein is kind of like the foreman of the body, right? It's the building block. Everything can basically be created from protein. And that's why most of the time we try to, advise or guide you in assuring that you get enough protein in your diet, okay? So let's dive straight into it, and it shouldn't be too long of a video. So if we look at this top portion first, we're just going to look at the amount of calories per gram of both fat, carbs, and protein. So the big thing to know is that for fat, it provides 9 calories per gram, okay? So compared to carbs, you can see carbs, it's 4 grams, and 4 calories, accidentally deleted that. And then also for protein, it's also 4 calories, okay? So when we were talking about kind of the hunter-gatherer back in the day in terms of like 100,000 years ago with our ancestors, and we're talking about how our body's primed for survival, the big thing is it's always going to try to retain that fat, right? Because for 1 gram, it's more calorific, which means it's more energy dense compared to carbs and protein. And that's why when we say that if you're in too large of a calorie deficit, you're not always just going to drop fat. Okay, because your body, again, is trying to be as efficient as possible. So what is another kind of cool thing about fat, carbs, and proteins, besides kind of what we just talked about, is that they all have different thermic effect of food. So when we talked about thermic effective food earlier, I just kind of explained that it's the energy that your body uses to obviously eat the food, metabolize the food, absorb the nutrients, and utilize it in the body, right? So all of them have different thermic effect of foods, okay? So again, like I said, this isn't a massive number, but just goes to show you why, again, protein might be quite important for you to basically prioritize in your diet at times, okay? So fats, thermic defective food, can be 0 to 3%, okay? Carbohydrate can be 5 to 10%, and protein can be 20 to 30%. Okay, so as you can see, there's a massive difference between your carbohydrates and your protein versus your fats. All right, so thermic defective food represents about 10% of your calorie intake in healthy adults eating a standard mixed diet. All right, so this is quite important because, again, a standard mixed diet could be a whole bunch of stuff, right? Chances are most people don't actually eat that fairly balanced of a diet. They probably eat a lot of processed foods and things like that. They go out, to McDonald's and Burger King and get all these different things that they probably know they should be eating all the time, a lot of fried foods, etc. But if you're making more of a conscious effort, then that might be slightly higher. It could be slightly lower depending on who you are, right? So the actual number will depend on several factors, which include your lean body mass, the size and composition of your meal. So I think this is really, really important for us to highlight. So we're just saying here that the size and composition of your meals, as well as your lean body mass, will massively affect thermic defective food, okay? So the energy required to digest each macronutrient, which is what TEF is, can be expressed as a percentage of the energy provided by this macronutrient. So again, that's just showed above, so we don't need those little 2 dots here, but you get the idea, all right? So what I also want to show you is this graph here. So another thing that's worth kind of talking about when we talk about fat, carbs, and protein is that they're all different when it comes to a kind of satiating score, right? And all satiation means is that you're going to feel more full when you eat certain foods, all right? Because of their compositions and things like that. For the most part, you usually hear people say that protein's more satiating compared to fats and carbs. And this is a study. And again, I've linked it in the notes of this lesson. So you can just kind of have a look at this. And I'll also just attach this so you can download it as well. But when we look at this here, and if I make this just a little bit bigger, all right, we can see, so this was a study that where they looked at the satiety of different foods. You can see here bakery products, snacks in confectionery, breakfast cereals, protein-rich foods, carbohydrate-rich foods, and fruit. So you can see that, and these are different ranges, okay? That's all this means on this graph. But for the most part, you can see the ones that are quite high. So let's look at here, popcorn, surprisingly. So that might be a good snack for some people that might be dieting because, again, it's going to be satiating. You don't have to eat a whole bunch, and it's not as calorie dense as maybe some fattier foods. If you look at things like, obviously, croissants, cakes, donuts, cookies, crackers, white bread, they're not overly high. But then again, we're looking at it out of a score of 100%. So actually, when we say that white bread isn't high compared to the rest, well, it is, because it's saying it's 100% satiating. Crackers will actually be higher. Cookies will be higher, whereas these ones tend to be a little bit lower. When you start looking at kind of, peanuts, yogurt, potato chips, ice cream, jelly beans, popcorn, like I said, is the highest. White bread still 100%. Muesli starts getting a little bit higher. These are different cereals, right? Porridge is quite high, but again, there's a bit more fiber in porridge, so that might be why. Then you look at protein-rich foods. You can see already all the protein-rich foods are way higher. Fish, steak, eggs, cheese, lentils. That's quite interesting. Then you start looking at carb-rich foods. So again, you start looking, wow, look at that. Potatoes is one of the most satiating foods, which kind of makes sense why a lot of people might use like sweet potatoes in their meal prep, especially when they're trying to diet. But again, just gives you an idea of different kind of items, different foods, and how you can maybe use that to your advantage. So I guess just to summarize this lesson, guys, the main thing I want you to take away is that fats is the most calorific. Carbohydrates is 4 calories, and protein is 4 calories per gram. But the other thing I forgot to mention is alcohol. And alcohol is 7 calories per gram, okay? So again, you could class this as either a fat or a carb. It's up to you. Depends how you track. You can even split it down the middle and say you're going to use half and half for both. But ultimately, the big things we want to know is how many calories we have per 1 gram of fat, carb, and protein, how much their thermic effect is, right, when it's estimated, all right? We also want to understand that your lean body mass and the size and composition of your meals are going to affect the thermic effect of food. And as well, we also have what's called a satiating index score, which you can have a quick look at and just have an idea of what kind of foods are going to be less satiating, so that when you're eating, and when you're putting maybe some foods together throughout the day, especially if you're maybe dieting, and even if you're just trying to put weight on and you don't necessarily want to eat more, or actually you want to eat more, well, if you want to eat more, you're going to focus on the lower ones because you need the calories. And if you want to eat less because you're dieting, then you're going to focus on the higher ones. So hopefully that makes sense. But that's just a quick lesson today, looking at the carbs, the proteins, the fats, alcohol, thermic effect of food a bit closer, and the satiety index score. All right. Any question, guys, let us know. We'll see you in the next video.